say the lie of the whole transatlantic slave trade, or bringing people over from Africa to America as slaves. So that's another big lie. So we're going to talk just a little bit about it, and we have thoroughly researched this subject, and you come to the conclusion. You don't even have to get very far to come to the conclusion that that this whole thing is just a sort of made up to cover up the truth, obviously. So again, we like to say, do your own research, of course.
Yes.
Because once you start doing your own research, you can see for yourself that kind of how ridiculous the whole thing is. But I'll let you go ahead and go a little bit.
All right. So a lot of people believe that black people in the United States and the Caribbean islands and whatnot,
all across
the Americas came here from Africa as slaves, and this is just not true. When I was doing my research, I was going through some of the journals of Christopher Columbus and like the priests on board, and like Jacques and Cortez. So it's the French, the Spanish, and the English conquerors is pretty much all you really call them, because they didn't do anything exploring. The people that they would come across, the Native Americans, and a lot of people would believe would be Native Americans, actually not what it really was. It was black people, all variations of black people. And
that's what they described them as.
Yeah, they described them literally as like different shades of skin color, but they closely resembled people from Ethiopia. And when you look at Ethiopia, that's in Africa. And they're like, how did these people get here? Well, they were just here.
Well, I felt like they knew back then that the indigenous people, and really when you look more thoroughly into the subject, you kind of get to the realization that the indigenous people of this whole world are black people, or different types of black people. And we can talk about that in another subject or whatever, but the whole purpose of this is to sort of, like I said, we're trying to bring up the truth here, because you can't, like we've said before, you can't, only the truth can heal humanity, right? That's kind of the point here, I guess.
Yeah.
You can continue.
The truth will set you free.
Yeah, right.
So it makes you wonder, it's like, well, why would they lie about this kind of thing? This is what you typically would get from people. Why would they lie? And whatnot. It's like, well, it's because they don't want people, they're trying to displace people permanently from where they're from and who they are.
Well, but the thing is, why would they lie about anything?
Yeah,
why do they lie about the earth being flat? Why do they lie about everything that comes up? Now, anytime you turn on the TV, everything's a lie, pretty much, right? Everything that's on the news or media, or all that's a lie. So why are they lying in general? Mm-hmm. Take it broader. Yeah, they're trying to displace people, but I think there's... well, you can continue what you were going to say.
For this particular subject, it's literally just to displace people.
Yeah.
Because and when you think about it, if black people knew here in the United States that they're the indigenous people, then all these countries and continents on this side are technically theirs, and not just that they're brought here and like everyone did this massive celebration when like, oh, look at that, President Obama officially have us documented as African Americans in a lot of the law books and stuff now. It's like, that's not a good thing, because you're not African Americans, you're just Americans.
Exactly. And that's where it gets really deceptive and like illegal, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
Because you're changing your title of who you are, and then you kind of take away, automatically, you've given away all of your rights to your ancestor land, basically. But
yeah, exactly. Then a lot of people, it's like when you see the transatlantic slave maps, I was taken by this as well. Like when I was going through my history classes, you just like see all these arrows, like, and how they traveled across. You're like, oh wow, they just went straight across and straight back, which is actually impossible when you start to really look into the natural gyres or the subsurface currents is what they're called. You can look them up for yourself. You'll see that the natural waters in the ocean have a pathway that they would actually travel. It's like, and they have it documented also. It's like, even if they had their sails up and there's strong winds, you can't go against these gyres. You'll just go backwards with them. And they said so they had to follow them. And to do that full lap, it would go from, let's see, like for when they did the trip, it would go all the way from England, the UK area, and it curves down along the west coast of Africa, and then it branches off across the northern part of South America, turns up towards the Caribbeans, and then follows the coastline of North America, and then finally goes right back around to the UK area. It's like they had to follow that whole path. There was no going backwards.
And so a trip that far, like, so since they had to go that route, because this is important, they had to take that route, they're going to be going back and forth, right? So how long does that trip take?
That trip takes quite a while. They don't really mention it too much, but it's like it's anywhere from like a year to like a year and a half, depending on the weather, the conditions of the sea.
They had to like port a lot and like wait out some weather conditions and whatnot.
And then
restock the ship for food and all that kind of stuff.
Exactly. And then the thing is, like, they're saying to restock a ship, just a standard merchant ship, you'd be in port for weeks. And it would take an entire village to restock and prepare these ships. So it's like that whole year and a half, that's just the travel time. That's not...
Come back to y'all one more time. Want to continue on talking about what we was talking about last time, and that was the slave ships and stuff like that, man. Like, just going into this whole transatlantic slave trade, man. Like, y'all really got to understand, you got to go back and forth and check this stuff, because like what you've been given is a short narrative and basically like a summary of a lie, and you didn't even get the whole truth of the lie because it ain't got enough to put it together. You know, they can't really put the whole story together, so they just give you bits and pieces and have a whole bunch of propaganda out there that's in order to force a lie. That's basically what it's there to do. You know, you got a lot of people that's trying to wake people up to this, but a lot of people just ain't getting it. You know, when people you know, when I first heard about the slave ship thing, I was like, you know, it didn't seem like that big of a deal. I was like, you know, they lost ships or whatever, you know, but I got to thinking about it, you know, because then we started doing research, me and my girl, we started doing research into it, and the further and further that we got into the research, the more and more that we saw that basically all of it was a lie, you know. And so basically, man, you know, a lot of y'all probably on to this, some of y'all not, you know. For those of you that's not, you can go check out the brothers at African American Ain't African. You know, they got a lot of different people out here that's putting out this work, man, so y'all can just get it, you know. If y'all people don't really know what's going on, then y'all need to wake up real fast, because they taking your shit right from you. You know, they've been doing it for a long time, and that's the thing about it. Like, we out here and we not really realizing it, man. We just allowing these people to take all of our resources, you know, us as a people. Us as a persons, you know, like you look at all the rest of the people around the world. We got grown people, you know. There's like 40 and 50 and 60-year-old people out here that's acting like little bitty ass children. Like, who are we as a persons, as a people? We're childlike. We are in a childlike state of mind. And I'm not saying like just your thinking and whatever, you know, because a lot of y'all people are articulate. You just don't give a damn. You just don't have no kind of, you know, you got a lot of frame of reference, but you have no single direction to tie it all together, because every single thing is all compartmentalized. You know, they tell you stuff in order to get you to look different directions at everything. You know, they don't put all the pieces together, and that's the thing. Our communication has been broken down. So how do we communicate? We communicate through them. And like people like me, if people was to start listening to me and actually thinking that, you know, actually just, you know, I'm not saying listen to me, but people was to just start looking at me, they would try to shut me down. There's different ways that they do that. I've already had people tell me that they can't see some of my posts that I put out, and I put out a lot of different stuff, man. I don't put out just a whole bunch of information, man. I try to put little tiny information, because a lot of people can't really digest a lot of the stuff that's being said, you know. So I'm gonna get back on to the slave ship thing, man. So like this is something that y'all brothers just a little further along, y'all can go look at. You look at the different ports and stuff like that. Like Cape Coast is one of them that's off the coast of Africa. It's supposed to be in Ghana or whatever. Well, this is one of the biggest ports that they had, man. You know what I mean? So they'll tell you like this is where the African slave trade imported most of their slaves and all this and all that stuff like that. You know, so I was like intrigued by the look into it, man, because actually the long story short, man, is my cousin went to this movement, to this little help fix Ghana type of thing, man, and in the process of going over there, I had seen that they posted pictures about this, so I started researching into it because I've already had talk with my cousin, man. He know that we're Indians and he know this, man, but he's just like, he indebted to these people and he's so enrooted with them, man. It's like they've taken his culture, and that's another thing that killed me is they take our good, hard people and make them look as if they are theirs. You know, they just rob them just like everybody else, man. But, okay, anyways, but the point about Ghana, man, you want to go look at this thing called Cape Coast. You know, they got all this history on it. So I started looking at it and looking at the geography of it and looking at the location, and then I started looking at the building. You know, I'm pretty military got a military mindset, man. So I understand war and strategy, man. I understand that you got to understand what it is that they was trying to do. You know, they say that the number one thing that they was doing was importing and exporting slaves. That's the last place that slaves would go before they shipped out to go to the long journey across the Atlantic. Okay, so if this is being the case, right, you would think that they would have cities that's close by that would supply them with a lot of different materials so that they can food and just different things, man. Food, cattle, ammunition, pretty much anything that you can have in order to take the 3-month trip across the Atlantic with 300 slaves. You know what I mean? They're going to need a lot of fucking resources, okay? And they're going to have this on a continuous basis if you're doing this as a business. Anybody with a business mind frame know that you have got to have your product has got to have resources in order to make it. You don't just get everything you sell, you do not get that back. You have to put back into it. So you have to have it's supply, man. You have to have enough supply. It's just more to running the business than doing the work. Okay, you have to actually supply the people with the food, the pay, everything, man. You know, all this stuff, the conversation has to add up, or else nobody's gonna do it. These people ain't just that powerful to where they was just taking people and just like making them just brainwashing them that bad, man. Y'all gotta understand, y'all are that bad now, because every single thing that you hear from them comes directly from them. I mean, it comes through your ear since a child. It's like you had a demon in your ear the whole time, man, and you don't understand it. But the whole world has had it, and it's all been compartmentalized. Each person is to drive their lane. You know, everybody is to do their same thing. You can go days and days and days without seeing the same person. I mean, without seeing somebody that's right beside you. You can go your whole life and not never know your neighbor, man. I mean, it's like it's that way because they have compartmentalized people and conditionalized their mind to be separated. All while they can just dissect and try.
Somewhere, I think it's somewhere I read it was like it could be up to 8 months to a year or even longer than a year.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
So just taking, and then of course we have to take it to, so yeah, you can't go backwards against the gyres, and then also the waters across the Atlantic Ocean, those aren't like smooth sailing waters. talking about, like, obviously after 1500s, right around that time, to maybe even the 1600s. Like, this is what their technology was. Like, they had wooden ships. They're traveling across the Atlantic Ocean. They had to, at some point, close the holes of the ship so that they wouldn't get water and whatnot right into the
Exactly.
boat. And just that act alone can kill off like half your crew. So just take that a little bit into consideration when you're thinking about trying to bring. I think the numbers are over the course of when the slave trade happened to the end of it, 12 million people, 12.5 million people. It starts to look a little like that's impossible, but we did quite a bit of digging. Did you have anything else you wanted to add to that part there?
Oh, no, you can go ahead.
So we did a little bit more digging and did put some statistics, and other people have done this too. And actually, we put this on YouTube. We'll put in a little, the comment section or description section, a few other videos that people who have done research on this as well. And this is interesting. All right, so we start looking through sort of the numbers, and this is where it's kind of like, really, come on, you guys, come on. When you start looking at the numbers.
One of the funny thing about the numbers first is, like, the numbers are never consistent.
Yeah, the numbers are never consistent. And before I get into this, so what is that one website, the transatlanticslavetrade.com or something like that? Well, there's a few websites.
Slavevoyages.com.
Slavevoyages.com. So there's a few websites that have, like, the documented, like, hundreds and hundreds of ships that supposedly brought all these people over. But do research on these ships. Like, go into these websites and actually click on the ship, and they'll give you information on it. A lot of these ships were just cargo ships, so they just carried goods back and forth. And still, with that, many of them were just blueprints. Like, they were ships that
were
not brought into the physical world, you know. So they didn't really exist. You kind of have to do digging to figure that out. But you look at it. I mean, it's pretty.
It doesn't just stop at they're like, oh look, here's the ships
are here. They have them all listed. They have the numbers of people they brought over. No, those are all made up numbers. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So we have about. I mean, this is like rough statistics, okay? So we're going to give them from like 1619, because these are the numbers, the years that they actually brought people over from Africa, like they changes depending on what you look at. So I went with, and it's an average, and I went with the more common one and kind of rounded out. But basically 1619 to 1858 roughly, right? 1858 when the slave trade supposedly ended. So that's 366 years, I believe. So you have a time span of 366 years. In that time span, you had to bring 12.5 million people over rough Atlantic waters in wooden ships. All right, so 12.5 million people. So that you divide that up into 30. So you can say there's maybe 36,000 voyages that would have had to been made over that span of 366 years to bring that many people over.
Which is about 90 voyages per year.
Mm-hmm. So you break that down more, you get about 90 voyages every year for 366 years straight. Alright, so that would mean that you'd have to have a ship coming into port every 4 days with a group of at least 380 people from Africa. They would all have to be alive. And that would be the only way you could get these numbers, okay? Every 4 days. Now, keep in mind that, and some people do the math differently, say you have to come in, a ship has to come in every day, but the specifics, the details are not that important. Every day, every 4 days, whatever, based off my math, is every 4 days. And then also remember that the ship can't just turn around and leave. You have to have a cycle of ships coming in every 4 days. And so that ship has to get there and leave, okay? But like we said before, it takes over 2 weeks sometimes for them to restock a ship and get the whole town has to be involved in like getting enough food and water on the ship for the crew to travel across the Atlantic Ocean. Each trip, taking into account that each trip took on an average of about 18 months.
With the ports and everything.
Mm-hmm. Stopping at different ports because you had to stop.
Yeah.
Because you had to get more food and more water, and so each trip took about 18 months. So just thinking about that, in your head, you can see that doesn't make sense. Okay, how many ships would they have to even make this number do this? Several hundred for sure to keep them coming and going.
Yeah, and they'd never be able to break down or lose any or anything.
You couldn't have a ship that would crash or break or whatever. They have to be very well built, well working ships that can just keep going and going around this going from Americas to Europe to Africa, back to the Americas. I think one number is like 400 to 500 ships or something like that. So I guess the question becomes: so could they actually do this? No, they couldn't.